Hey, welcome to your Gemini horoscopes for the week of December 3rd through the 9th, the first full week of December, and the week that we move into the shadow period of the final Mercury retrograde of the year. It's true. There is another one. Of course, there's always another one, right? And we move into that shadow period about Wednesday on the 6th because the actual Mercury retrograde starts on the 13th, the following Wednesday. So, as usual, to me, the retrograde can be difficult. Sometimes the shadow periods are more difficult. But retrogrades are not necessarily just difficult either. There's a lot of things, a lot of problems that do fix themselves and or rectify themselves during Mercury retrogrades as well. Being that this is a Capricorn retrograde, this is actually interesting for you Geminis because Capricorns tend to be extremely structured, extremely organized, extremely focused, which is the antithesis of a Gemini. Gemini is not to say that you aren't organized or that you aren't focused or driven or ambitious in any way, shape, or form. But Geminis tend to be a little bit more fluid. You like to move from one thing to another. And while it does provide a lot of freedom, it also unfortunately hinders a lot of success in terms of goal setting and following through and things like that. Intellectuals get distracted very easily. I know I'm an Aquarius. We're very similar in that way. It's not easy to not just provide a structure for ourselves. I think that's the easy part. It's sticking to it without getting completely bored and just sort of moving on to something else, if that makes sense. Focus continues to be on the home for Geminis this week. So, in terms of going into that Mercury retrograde, I could say that that's not a bad place to start, but it's not a great place to start either, especially if there are things that need to be addressed and or fixed or repaired in the home. Definitely best to get that done if you can earlier in the week rather than waiting until you get into the shadow period. That doesn't mean that once we get into the shadow period, you can't deal with it. It just means that there's a possibility, not even a guarantee, a possibility that things might be a little bit more complicated once we get into that retrograde setting, if that makes sense. But also, I feel what is coming up for you guys this week, or a lot of what's coming up with you guys this week around the home, has to do with not just making changes in the home, but making changes in how much time you spend inside or outside of that home, if that makes sense. Now, every Gemini I've ever known, first of all, has a lot of energy and they're constantly in and out, in and out, in and out all the time. Geminis that are constantly out of the house may find themselves pining for just the quiet space of their environment. While on the flip side, Geminis that have been spending a little bit too much time at home are literally like going nuts because the walls are closing in on them and they just can't take it. So I feel like either way, this is telling you that you either need to slow down and rest because you're going too fast, or you need to find something that is going to take you out of the house a little bit. As an intellectual, spending too much time indoors is actually really, really bad because what happens is that you start to only entertain yourself with this, and this can be really entertaining, can also be really scary when it goes in a very scary place. But after a while, it gets really depressing because you're basically just talking to yourself all day or the same people every day, and you're not getting those intellectual interactions with other people. So we often, all of us, seem to find ourselves in these positions to where it just feels like we need to do something, we need to join a group, a book club, or something in order to find a space to be able to have that intellectual stimulation after a while. Because believe it or not, it's the pits. When you don't have it, small talk is not a thing that intellectuals enjoy doing. Personally, I'd rather talk about anything than gossip, than what this person did over here, than, what I consider to be, and this is going to sound extremely rude, but your insignificant little life right now. And I don't necessarily feel that way. But when I'm faced with the same conversation over and over and over again, I get really, really frustrated. And I just want to crawl into my little cave by myself because what's going on in here is more interesting to me. So I feel like it always has to be a balance, because once you revert into that space where you're not interacting with other people, it starts to get really depressing and we do really crazy things when we get to that place. So I feel like this week is all about doing the opposite of what you have been doing. If you're just running yourself ragged, you need to take some time for you. You need to lock yourself in your cave and take a couple of days of rest and re-energize yourself. But if you're not doing that and you've been spending too much time hiding away from people because you can't seem to find somebody that's stimulating you enough, then it's time to look into other avenues of finding that stimulation. So if your family isn't giving you that stimulation, go and see what kind of groups are out there. There's a million groups on Facebook where you can socialize also to a certain extent. Obviously, it's not face to face, but a lot of people don't care these days whether it's face to face or not. Anything that you can do to provide that intellectual stimulation without feeling like you're in a hamster wheel, because it's that hamster wheel that starts to get to us after a while. So that's what I have for you guys this week. If you love your horoscopes, do consider sending me a tip or donation through my Ko-fi link, which is there in the description. Would really appreciate that. I definitely appreciate all the support I have been getting through the horoscopes. I really appreciate it. I'm Melissa Bruce, Heavy Metal Sidekick. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys next week. And in the meantime, get out of that rut, because it's no fun. And it's especially no fun for a Gemini. I'll see you guys next week. You guys make it a great week.